the architecture that we've come up with to improve this process. We're going to, this is again, John Collins, end user, Director of Sales with FoxGuard Solutions. I'll be introducing the project. Also have on the line here Curtis Bond, the Solutions Architect from SigmaFlow, Gary DeFazio, the Strategic Marketing Director with the Industrial Cybersecurity Group from Tripwire. So we're going to jump into patch management side of NERC-CIP and talk through a better way of doing it. And whether or not you've been through multiple CIP audits in the past and are a grizzled veteran of the NERC-CIP compliance, or a first time to the electric utility space, learning about CIP for the first time, wanted to talk through how patch management is often one of the most challenging NERC-CIP requirements. Actually just came from a recent ERO events the last few weeks here, which 007 certainly gets cited as one of the most violated NERC-CIP standards, and within 007, the patching side of it, based on the amount of throughput of and velocity of patching that gets required in these programs, is again one of the key focus areas for a lot of organizations. So specifically within NERC-CIP, the standard 007-6 R 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4 will be reviewed today. And each organization is going to take on part of the presentation. FoxGuard, Tripwire is going to start us out, and then FoxGuard and SigmaFlow as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started talking through how the patching program, again, as many folks out there are using spreadsheets, SharePoint files, and have a very manual process of doing that. But by combining the skill sets of Tripwire, FoxGuard, and SigmaFlow, can really add the tool sets to automate this entire process to lower the risk associated with your NERC-CIP program and increase the resiliency of your bulk electric system assets that are in scope for you. So we're going to go through the process of having Tripwire present their side of things. FoxGuard Solutions will go next, and SigmaFlow will finish it off. We'll also leave the last 5 minutes open for questions. You'll be able to use the chat channel as part of the GoToMeeting to submit any questions along the way, and then we'll have those questions, go through those the last 5 minutes. So with that, we're going to hand it over to Gary to talk through the Tripwire aspect of the NERC-CIP program.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. Gary DeFazio, Strategic Marketing Director for Tripwire within our Industrial Cybersecurity Business Group. As you can see here on this diagram, Tripwire is the component that kind of starts everything off by harvesting data from all the different assets that are in scope for NERC-CIP. And we feed information to FoxGuard as well as SigmaFlow that we'll go through during this presentation. So for those of you that are new to Tripwire, Tripwire's been around for a long time. We were incorporated in 1997. We are now owned by Belden. Belden acquired Tripwire in January of 2015. And what's great about being part of Belden is that, as a $2 billion company, Belden's been making significant investments in Tripwire, where we're able to bring new industrial cybersecurity and compliance solutions to market. And we've got teams now that are totally dedicated, on addressing this space, whether it's utilities, transportation, energy, discrete or process manufacturing. And we've been driving NERC-CIP compliance solutions since 2008. So Tripwire helps our customers in 3 areas of their business. The first is, helping you protect your organization relative to making sure you're implementing cybersecurity controls. And then from an operational perspective, ensuring that your environment's operating in the way that it needs to. We're going to concentrate our presentation today on our efforts on how we help our customers achieve and sustain compliance over time, particularly around the patch management requirements for NERC-CIP. So what's interesting about Tripwire is that a lot of people know Tripwire in the way that we harvest data through what we would call agents that install on servers. But over the years, and as being part of Belden, we've expanded our data collection capabilities in a number of different ways, including different capabilities in what we call active, where we're actively interacting with the device. Not only do we have agent-based solutions, but we have many different kinds of agentless data collection capabilities, which include things like command line interfaces, SNMP, perusing web user interfaces for configuration information, as well as being able to talk native industrial protocols such as Modbus or Ethernet IP to get information about the assets that are in the environment. And recently, over the last 6 months, we've brought to market a passive data collection technology where we can dissect a copy of the network traffic through things like span or mirror ports or network taps, where we're aka eavesdropping on conversations to figure out what's on the network and how is it communicating. And last, we've got hybrid, where we're basically pulling data from third-party applications that already have information about the network. And what's interesting relative to the North American utility market is we're working on an integration with Eaton IMS that will be coming to market here in the next couple of months, where we can then apply different ways to harvest that product version and vendor information that we can feed to FoxGuard as an input. So just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that Tripwire not only has agent-based solutions, but also has different active capabilities through agentless approaches and passive and hybrid techniques as another input for patch management. While Tripwire, FoxGuard, and SigmaFlow all do many different things for NERC-CIP, the two areas that we'll be focusing on today will be security patch management as part of CIP 007 and configuration monitoring as part of CIP 10. Because as you guys know, it's really hard when that 35-day clock ticks around determining what's installed and what needs to be patched and how you document your evidence according to do that. So Tripwire has a NERC-CIP solution suite. These particular products can be ordered all together or one at a time. The two that apply most for the patch management solution are Tripwire Enterprise, that does all of our baseline and configuration monitoring, as well as a new product called Tripwire Industrial Visibility, which is the passive asset data collection, which allows us to kind of capture configurations and firmware versions of unique devices such as serial to Ethernet converters, which you now can document through your compliance process relative to the patch management solution too. Another unique solution for Tripwire Enterprise is an extension of that product called the Whitelist Profiler, where the Whitelist Profiler it helps us manage how systems or devices should be configured relative to baselines and the associated justification and documentation for things like open ports and services, authorized users, installed software. And we use this component as the actual input to both FoxGuard for installed software and custom software, as well as SigmaFlow for compliance evidence. So this is the part where we can generate crisp, pristine output in CSV format that can then be used as an input to FoxGuard and SigmaFlow. And here's just a sample screenshot of what that looks like. And another thing that's great about Tripwire being part of Belden is we now have hardware-based solutions at our fingertips that we can help our utility customers do more relative for NERC-CIP. So here's a device, the TOFINO security appliance, that is part of our solution set now that can be used to help utilities, mitigate the risk of how malware is handled, right? Particularly around malicious code prevention for SIP 007R3. This particular device has deep packet inspection on industrial protocols, two that are particular to the utility world is Goose and DMP3. And this can also do protocol sanity checking, to ensure and help protect against zero-day attacks that might be doing things, leveraging those protocols in ways that they were never intended. And rest assured that, if these were brought into your environment, Tripwire does have monitoring solutions for these devices and can pass that configuration and firmware version type information to FoxGuard that we then can also help ensure that these devices are getting patched when they need to. With that, I'll hand it over to John.
Thanks, Gary. Yep, so I'm going to just give a little bit of background on FoxGuard solution. We are based in Virginia and have been around since 1981. In the early 90s, we started focusing in on industrial control solutions. So I just wanted to let you know that we've been working on these types of problems and solutions for many decades now. And we started out by actually building a lot of the HMI and SCADA infrastructure that many of you might have in some of your generation facilities today. In 2005, the organization made a shift and started focusing on cybersecurity solutions in addition to the hardware build out. That's what we still do to this day. And since then, we've stood up our ICS cybersecurity infrastructure over the last 14 years and continue to expand to working with many different end users, almost entirely in the electric utility space. Organization definitely takes quality and this very sensitive patching process very seriously, and thus have worked to gain our ISO 9001 and 27001 certifications to ensure that quality steps are there and done in a secure way. So in 2005, we focused a lot of our efforts in patching of control systems and focused on some of our OEM partnerships. But in 2013, we were awarded a Department of Energy SEDS grant to enable to help focus on a patching of a multitude of vendors, versions, and vintages of industrial control systems. So we've been looking at this problem since 2013 from an end user's perspective, and how do I patch at scale across a fleet of different product lines and that may have been acquired over the years. We've also done some work with the Department of Defense on building management systems, and are doing some work with Lawrence Livermore National Labs at the Veterans Affairs Hospital in Las Vegas. So in terms of what FoxGuard provides and how that fits into this flow, I call this a patching life cycle. And we'll start off at the top of the screen here, 12 o'clock, because asset identification is crucial for FoxGuard to be able to do our quality of work in getting patch information for end users for a NERC-CIP program. And that's where Tripwire helps the process and does asset identification. If you have multiple control systems out there, multiple vintages of substation infrastructures, being able to pull all that information together and just identify what's out there certainly is a challenge. So we help organizations work through that, and Tripwire is definitely a great tool to consolidate the process and automate it. Once you have an understanding of what is out there, pulling together the baselines of what's actually active is, again, the next step in the patching process to ensure a quality NERC-CIP program for 007. And again, another area where Tripwire is most useful to pull all that information together in order to get it consolidated in one place to go to our next patching segment in terms of the 35-day NERC-CIP 007 R2.1 requirement. Is there a patch available for that piece of software, whether it's a piece of firmware, a device driver, a operating system, or OEM software inside those protected BES assets? The repository of keeping that information is where SigmaFlow fits into the picture. FoxGuard has a specific report that can be used to get into SigmaFlow to allow for the process to be documented from when that NERC-CIP auditors show up. And I'll show you an example of our patch availability report in a few slides here. But having the ability for FoxGuard to show you what's available in terms of your portfolio of SIP protected assets is something we do for both IT and your traditional ICS systems, whether it's firmware, operating systems, or network devices. From there, an important step is identifying applicability in terms of whether or not the patch is security related or not from a compliance standpoint for NERC-CIP. So the 007 R2.2 requirements to understand if this patch has to be deployed or whether a mitigation strategy can take place. Again, another important step to document for when those auditors show up. And again, where SigmaFlow fits into the process. FoxGuard also offers solutions in terms of acquisition. This will become more and more prevalent in terms of NERC-CIP requirements as the 013 requirements come online in terms of making sure that there's integrity associated with the binaries for each one of those patches that may or may not get deployed into the bulk electric system protected assets. FoxGuard Solutions also has a validation lab of industrial control system solutions that we can test and patch against to make sure the limited amount of risk is associated with deployment of patches. And finally, the deployment of the patches themselves into the production environment and pushing towards documentation, again, where SigmaFlow can help. So that's the entire patch management cycle and how FoxGuard can help automate the NERC-CIP patching process as best as possible. So in terms of we call it the patch availability report, PAR for short. This again covers all of your IT and OT assets for your 007 R2.1 requirements, and that would come roughly every 4 weeks or to fit inside the NERC-CIP 35-day calendar requirements. Also do assessments for security-related patches and hash checks from the OEM data sets, which will help for the 013 and 007 requirements. In addition to that, we'll offer end of support documentation repositories that can be used for when those auditors show up from your ERO. So on the screen here, you'll see an example of the patch availability report. As you see, the vendor, the device, and the model number are very important pieces of information to get right, which is helpful for working with our friends at Tripwire to pull that information. FoxGuard will designate if a patch has been released, the name of the patch, whether it's we do have some of this redacted on this example, and the dates in which that patch information was released from the vendor and checked by FoxGuard, in addition to a declination of whether or not the patch was security related or not. So this is a breakout screen of the actual patch information for a Cisco device. And again, the requirements are increasing from a patching integrity perspective and vulnerability perspective. So we also provide not only the patch information, the hash information that's provided by the OEM, but we'll also provide vulnerability information. And again, declination on the whether or not the patch is security related or not. So that's how our patch availability report fits into the NERC-CIP framework. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry at SigmaFlow.
All right, so just to start a little bit about SigmaFlow. SigmaFlow was founded in 2001. We had a focus at that time on business process consulting. We developed 2 workflow platforms out of that for the energy sector. One is in well delivery solutions and a NERC compliance manager. Our NERC Compliance Manager has been widely adopted by utilities across the U.S. and Canada. In January of 2019, we joined the IPKeys Power Partners Group. IPKeys' mission is to strengthen their cybersecurity programs of utilities and public safety organizations with a solution portfolio that encompasses networks, data centers, cybersecurity, software, hardware, and smart energy grids. So what does that mean in terms of the patching solution? Well, SigmaFlow as a product serves primarily as an evidence repository and gathering tool. So we're going to collect evidence, tag it appropriately for all of your standards, and be able to put these things out into an RSOC generation tool that'll make your audit cycles go much more smoothly. To support that, we have a fully audit trailed workflow that's fully customizable and schedulable, as well as various supporting entities will keep things like cyber asset inventories that can be tracked for their impact rating assessments, their mitigations, changes, all of those things that get associated along with those. We'll also keep your mitigation plan workflows wrapped fully in approvals and audit trails, the baseline change assessments, and various other things like baseline monitoring tickets that really support this process. Again, all fully tagged, fully reportable, and we'll actually be bringing in data from FoxGuard and Tripwire and leveraging their data collection power to help automate a lot of these processes. And everything that we pull in from them, again, can go right into your RSOC generation tool. All right, so this is an example of that kind of reporting that we can pull out. So SigmaFlow provides a single platform where we can report across all three systems. So from here, we can run monitoring of the data coming in from Tripwire and spin off workflows, alert reports, and various other actions from any exceptions from your promoted or approved baselines that come in there. We can track patches that are coming in from FoxGuard that haven't been fully assessed, mitigated, or implemented yet, and provide alerting around those sorts of things. And we can even sort those in amongst your different facilities, departments, all of those sorts of things. All of these are available for managerial reports. We're also going to be able to spin off alert reporting and evidentiary reporting. So in addition to dashboards like this, at the end of the patching process, we'll be able to generate patch lifecycle reports that'll maintain exactly when it was available and checked by FoxGuard through when it was signed off on by your human IT professionals, and then when it actually got implemented, including any mitigation plan that may have occurred in between. We'll be able to wrap all of that into one neat audit-friendly package that generates on demand with no further intervention needed. So here's the other piece of the workflow that's really, really going to gain power with the FoxGuard and Tripwire integration. We can actually start automating processes like check patch sources. So with a tool like FoxGuard integrated with SigmaFlow, we can start pre-filling all of these things, determining which cyber assets they're applicable to, determining exactly where you can go to implement these things. And all your users are going to have to do, they'll get an email, they'll see a task a lot like this, and they just need to decide which patches do I implement, which patches do I mitigate. This is a huge time savings in terms of labor. And the best part is we're going to be able to cut out not only the workload, but also the timing risk. So a lot of 007 violations that we hear about, it's not even necessarily that the work wasn't done properly, it's keeping track of all the different timescales involved. So this is where the workflow scheduler really comes into play. We're going to monitor FoxGuard for those new patches. We're going to use our workflow scheduler to kick those off on time. And then we're going to wrap reminders and escalations around those tasks to make sure that you don't miss any of these critical step 007 dates. We're also able to carry those same dates through your mitigation and change processes, so we can automate all of your escalations and reminders there, as well as report on it. So really just to wrap up here on the SigmaFlow product, what we're bringing to the table with Tripwire and FoxGuard integrated is the ability to monitor and automate throughout. So as you can see here in the slide, Tripwire is going to feed FoxGuard and SigmaFlow with full information about your cyber asset inventory and what's observed out in the wild. FoxGuard is going to feed us the data we need on patch availability. And then SigmaFlow is going to take care of scheduling and automating many of these processes, building out your reports, and generating your RSOS. That reduces not only your workload for your users, but also your risk of missing dates and otherwise experiencing violations. I think we've got a few minutes left in the meeting, so I'm going to turn this over to Betsy, who's going to be going through our GoToMeeting chat for questions.
Okay, we do have a few questions. First one is for SigmaFlow. How often can the data be refreshed, and can the interface run on demand?
Okay, I can answer that. So the FoxGuard data in a typical implementation is going to be refreshed nightly. So we'll run those workflow schedule checks for patch assessments every morning based on data that comes in. Tripwire will be nightly uploads with the ability to run them on demand during change workflows.
Question for FoxGuard. Can you provide patches for all vendors, IT and OT?
Yes, FoxGuard, we are working with many vendors inside the industrial control system space, your SELs, your ABBs, OSIs, to pull patch information, as well as your more traditional IT organizations like Microsoft, Cisco. So we will 100% bring in all of your different IT and OT devices for a patching program.
Question for SigmaFlow. How long are historical records of the integrations kept?
So integration history is a configurable option in SigmaFlow, but our typical client will keep change records for those for 3 years to maintain a full audit period history.
Another question for SigmaFlow. How is the mitigation plan followed in SigmaFlow?
So a typical mitigation plan implementation is going to consist of a step where we request details, what cyber assets, what patches are involved, what steps are you taking to mitigate, what are the risks, and when is this mitigation plan going to expire. That'll run through an approval, and then we'll monitor those expiration dates so that we can send out alerts when we've got plans that are coming up.
Okay. Tripwire question. If Tripwire Whitelist Profiler is used to provide the data to FoxGuard and SigmaFlow, how do they provide the OS or firmware versions, especially for appliances that do not run a Tripwire agent?
Yeah, this is a great question because we're able to leverage agentless capabilities like SSH, where we can authenticate to the device and run commands against it, where we can then provide that output as an input to the whitelist profiler, which can then be fed to FoxGuard and SigmaFlow.
Question for SigmaFlow. How do you secure flat file communication?
So when we get these reports coming out of FoxGuard and Tripwire, when they're within the same firewall, we're able to just grab those through a standard Windows encryption. When we don't have that available, we'll use SFTP jobs through an intermediate server if they're behind separate zones.
Another question for SigmaFlow. Is there any capability of actually automating the patch deployment into a test environment?
I wish I could say yes. So SigmaFlow is a documentation system, so we're going to send out these tasks to be done and automatically generate for your end users exactly what it is that they need to deploy, but we do not interface with, say, Windows to go install those KBBs for you.
Question for Tripwire. Can you verify that along with Tripwire Enterprise, in order to integrate Tripwire Enterprise with FoxGuard and SigmaFlow, will we also need licensing for TE Commander?
Yes, that is correct, because TE Commander is the piece that massages into the format that FoxGuard and SigmaFlow.
Okay, we have one final question, I believe, for FoxGuard. How do you provide the data?
We have a lot of folks that ask for the information in a PDF format to store for their records, and then also JSON and or CSV files in order to sit in other places. Is that all the questions, Betsy?
Yes.
All right. Well, I just wanted to thank everybody for jumping on the webinar here today with SigmaFlow, FoxGuard, and Tripwire. We'll be able to, this was recorded and can send that out to everybody. And if there's any other follow-up questions, just let us know and we'll get back to you directly. Thanks for everybody's time.